Hello everyone, welcome back to Total Football Talk. So as always, we're going to look at the latest news coming out of Manchester United, and there is plenty, and we know where we're going to be kind of circling around the usual stories about Delap and what's being said about him. Cunha, is he going to come? Do we want him? What do you guys think? I would love to see Cunha come, and there is talk of Cunha coming to Manchester United. I hope it's true. Don't know if it is or not, but that one does get me a little bit excited. I did speak before about how influential I think he could be to Manchester United going forward, but that is one where I would love to see him come, but we'll get into that. We'll also look at what's being said about Johnny Evans and Aiden Heaven. Their potential returns are looking good, which is great news, especially considering we've got such a big game coming up on Thursday and some important games after that, Newcastle and then Lyon again. To have more players back on to strengthen that bench or to help with the starting team would be absolutely fantastic. We'll also look at the kind of internal feelings of what was said about Manchester United's attack even before Ruben Amorim had arrived through the eyes of Jason Willcox. And then we'll just have a little look on Bruno Fernandes' stats, which are well worth a little sort of mulling over, just because Bruno does still divide the fan base. Some people just think he's stat pads. Some people think he actually is extremely integral and important to the team. But yeah, we'll have a look at what is being said about Bruno at the minute. But yeah, so this is the one. This is a story that was coming out, and this is coming from Ben Jacobs, who's pretty good around Manchester United. And Ben Jacobs was saying that Cunha's agent was set for talks in England with Manchester United. Manchester United does appeal for Cunha. The lack of Champions League football, should United not win the Europa League, won't necessarily count against him. Now, I think what's interesting about this is, said Ben Jacobs is more of a Chelsea man. He gets some really, really good stories around Chelsea, a journalist who has the inside track to the Chelsea. But with Manchester United, especially around the guitar, whenever we were going through the whole guitar sort of Sir Jim Ratcliffe saga, he was really on top of it. He was pretty good about keeping a balanced view on which side he thought was maybe kind of ahead at certain stages and who wasn't. So I think Ben Jacobs is one definitely to listen to. I'm not saying he's going to be right on this. The release clause on Cunha is around £62 million. Now, if you pay the release clause up front, I believe you have to pay the entire transfer up front. And I've got a feeling that Manchester United won't be able to do that. They might have to try and do something like they did with Lenny Euro if they're going to make this deal happen, where they pay a bit more, but they pay it off over installments over several years. And I think that's the only way Manchester United can make this work. How far up the ladder they're going to have to go with having to pay over the 62 million, I'm not entirely sure. So is that a massive stumbling block? What do you guys think? And good people out there, what's your opinion on this? Do you think that Cunha is the player that we should go after? Should we get him? Do you want him to come? As I mentioned before, I feel he's that little bit of a maverick who lives on the edge, who's kind of got the Wayne Rooney sort of Eric Cantona vibes about him. Has the temperament to potentially get sent off, but also has the kind of audacity in his play to make magic happen and have, there aren't many players in the Premier League, and I've talked about this before, that excite you. He is one that could potentially help light up Manchester United going forward. And I would love to see him be our primary target alongside a striker in the summer. And obviously that striker is looking still very like it's potentially going to be Delap. So let's move into the Delap story. And this was kind of been doing the rounds for a little while from Chris Wheeler, that, Manchester United have made Delap their number one target. He's favoured ahead of Osimhen, Gyökeres and Etike. City unlikely to trigger the buyback clause. City already have Alvarez. They've just brought in, they've sold Alvarez, but they've brought in Marmoush and they've already got Haaland. So I don't think they're going to be interested in this. But United obviously will face competition from other Premier League rivals. And I think Liverpool could be one who may have an interest in Delap. And if that is the case, he may well supersede United and, go and play for Liverpool because they're a better team than us. They're in the Champions League. They maybe have a lot more to offer. I'm a United fan. It really hurts me and pains me to talk about Liverpool in that respect, but it's got to be said, and it's probably true at this particular stage. So this is kind of where we are. But is Cunha and Delap as sort of two coming in from Manchester United. Would that work for you? If we didn't get an Osman, ideally what you would want is you'd want an Osman and a Gyökeres, a Delap coming in as the kind of number 2, and you would want a Cunha coming in as one of the 10s. And I think that would be a brilliant transfer window on sort of incomings. Then it depends on what you do with your outgoings. And there has been talk about Anthony and Real Betis and the fact that they could potentially have to pay a slightly bit more for him. Other clubs are interested in him. We know that Bayern Munich had a nibble. We know that there are other potential Spanish clubs that are looking at him now as well. And if they are interested in him, that just drives his price up, which would leave us with maybe making a little bit of a profit. And if that profit can go towards helping us, bring in someone like a Gyökeres as opposed to a Delap, then that is really worth considering. But it does seem that Delap is our main target at the minute in terms of strikers. For you guys out there, I suppose the question is Etike, Osman, Gyökeres, or Delap. Who would you prefer of those 4 strikers? If you had a choice of those 4, who would you want to see come into the team? And me, personally, I'd still like to see a Gyökeres or an Osman just because they've got that bit more experience over a Delap. But I'd probably take a Delap over Etike, only because he's got Premier League experience, and I think that would help him. Now, there's no guarantees that means he's going to do very well for Manchester United. I get it, but I would probably lean towards Delap over Etike. Mind you, as I said, we will see what Cherokee is like when we play against him for Leon, because he's another player who's been linked with us on Thursday, but let's keep an eye on that one. Now, this was what was said before. So Manchester United's lack of attacking threat was identified to the scouting team headed by Jason Willcox and Christopher Vivell before Ruben and Amorim arrived at the club. So, I mean, it's not rocket science. We as a fan base know that there's been a massive issue with the forward line and the inability to score goals, and the ridiculousness to not be able to create chances on a regular basis. The odd one sporadically for Højlund or Xerxes or whoever's playing up front, but in general we have been poor for years now. Not just this season, not just last season. Cavani had to have the graveyard shift up front. Martial had the graveyard shift up. Rashford had it whenever he was playing up front. The list goes on and on and on. Obviously, they've identified that, which is maybe something that hasn't been identified in the past. But it's not just about this. It's about the supply line to the strikers with the 10s or the wing backs, whoever it is that's going to put that ball into the box, and also having a striker who is in the right positions to score the goals to drive us up the league. So if Willcox and Vivell are across this and they are trying to pinpoint what we need, I hope they get it right in the summer, because we really need to make that work. Because defensively, we have some excellent recruits. Yoro hasn't been dribbled past in the last 12 games since that game against Southampton, and the winger name eludes me once again. He who tore him a new one, Yoro, and I get it. Yoro was young. He makes mistakes. Absolutely fine. I'll criticize him for that game, but as someone who's going forward, I'll not kind of go in on him at all. But he's been superb. 19 undribbled pass in the last 12 games. That's a phenomenal figure. The kid is getting better, faster, stronger, and adapting really well to the Premier League. I'm absolutely delighted for him. So that's where we are with that one. And then just talking about centre backs, Johnny Evans and Aidan Heaven are both training on grass, making positive recovery. Aidan's rehab is going well, and they're not sure when to rush him back, but they don't want to do it too soon. Brilliant that Aidan Heaven isn't out for the season. Hopefully he will be back very soon in the team. He gives us balance on that left side. Obviously, Delap was injured. Maybe he'll be back for the Lyon game. If not, maybe he'll be back for the Newcastle game. I personally wouldn't risk him. If he's not fit for the Lyon game, I wouldn't risk him for the Newcastle game. I'd leave him there and let him be ready for the Lyon game in a week's time, in a week and a bit's time, and just allow him to get that rest and recuperation just to be fit and ready, because he's only missed a couple of games, so he'll be absolutely fine to come back in. But it's great news to have Aidan Heaven back. Nice to know that Johnny Evans is coming back to reinforce that back line should we need it. And then, as I said, hopefully Delap will come back too. And this is just a little bit of information that we had coming out through Nat Schultz, who has some good information coming out of Manchester United. And he says, internally, Manchester United, there is feeling the moving on Garnacho could come back to bite them, giving his obvious potential. Now, I think some of this is maybe being talked about because of what Alanga is currently doing for Forest. Alanga went through a 17-month period where he struggled at Manchester United, didn't create, didn't score, couldn't get going, just lost his way. And maybe they're looking at Garnacho thinking, we could have a potential, not Alanga as sorts, but we could have a very good player in our hands that we could let go and potentially could cause us a problem down the line where he goes to a rival, or maybe he goes abroad and he really finds his feet and becomes the player that I think there's a really good player there. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, fair enough. But I think there's a really good player in him, and I think Manchester United, or I think he's worth at least another season of development with Ruben Amorim and this team. But as I said, he may go in the summer. We may have to sell him, and that is just coming back on the Glazers to, pay off some of the debt and also try and bring in some of the players that Ruben Amorim wants. So he might not stick around. They've already tried to sell him once. They could well try to sell him again, but I still think there's a lot of potential in this kid. People are saying he could be the next Shannon. Say it could well be, and I could be completely wrong. I'll be on my low man's up, but I think there's something in him. But I just fingers crossed that he can at least produce what he was producing the other night going forward. Willing worker and trying to create rather than trying to cut in and just shoot at every given opportunity. And then talking about creating and shooting, this is a Statman Dave who does some really good stuff. Bruno Fernandes has created more chances than any other player in the Premier League this season. The players behind him are Cole Palmer and Mo Salah. And so Bruno has created 75 chances, Cole Palmer 73, Mo Salah 71. So, as I said, Bruno does divide the fan base. People are on board with him. Some people are not on board with him. Obviously, people will say he's just stat padding by just trying to create chances. I don't really know what a player's supposed to do if they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. But that's maybe another conversation. I think Bruno is really on fire at the minute. He played really well in the Manchester derby, and I just hope he keeps playing well between now and the end of the season, because if he does, that gives us a chance for some silverware, or at least to get to a final and have the opportunity to win something at the end of the season. Okay, guys, that's your wrap up of 10 minutes. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Keith, and if you're enjoying the content, please hit the old subscribe button, get your comments in below. Hit the like button. It would massively help me grow this little thing. And and if you stuck around to the end, you're a legend. Thank you so much. I'm going to leave it there and see you tomorrow.